Good evening and welcome to All for Wins Football. We are back with another lower league lingo. We're very much looking forward to talking about everything that's happening in the WNL. But first, this. Unbelievable. Absolutely. And I'm not talking about Nick's dancing either. Absolutely. The reason why I'm saying unbelievable is because obviously it is Champions League night as well, and Bayern Munich have scored within 2 minutes of the kickoff. So Bayern are already ahead against Manchester United, which I could have done without. Pernilla Harder scoring a goal there. So there we go. That's frustrating little thing, but there we are. That's not what we're here for this evening. Let's move on to the football that matters tonight. Hello, you guys in the chat. Lovely to see you, Emily and Claire. Good to see you both. Right, let's say hello to the people that we've got together today. Nick and John. Nick, lovely to have you here. Although the rumours that you and Stu Barker are the same person still yet to be proven to be false. Because once again, you're here and he's not.
He's just running scared.
Well, there we go. That's Nick for you. And John, how are you doing? You all right, mate?
Well, also I'm running scared because Stourbridge are very teetering towards the bottom of the league at the moment. So
it's
also
not 6-7, John. It's not 6-7. It's 4-5, 4-5.
Well, I don't know about 6-7 or 4-5. Looks more like 11-4-12, and that's not a good place to be if you're Stourbridge, that's for sure. But we will get to it. Behave yourself, Emily. It's a family show. None of that. Right. Onwards. We are going to begin, obviously, with the Northern Premier as we normally do. Now, obviously, we would usually go through this and really sort of talk about each one of the leagues. But we are from the north, but we're not starting immediately like that in the way that we normally do. We're not going to be having, it feels like it's going to be a long night as well. You're not kidding. But my fingers are firmly crossed. There's still a long time to go. So we shall see. We are going to start with the Northern Premier. But obviously what we won't have is young Gaza here to run us through it. So instead what we're going to do, there we go, you can see it now, is we're going to run through the Northern Premier Division to begin with, and we will just look at where people are, which is obviously self-explanatory because I'm sure you can read it. But as you can see, Burnley currently top of the table after 19 games. We really are reaching the business end of the season. 53 points for them and still unbeaten in the league. Just behind them, two teams on 18 games. Rugby Borough more like 18 points behind, 17 to be fair, but they are obviously nowhere near. It is obviously between Wolves and Burnley. Wolves with a game in hand. If they had to win that game in hand, they would be 8 points behind with 3 games left to go. So lots happening in that promotion race there. When you look at the bottom, still a little bit tight. There are some chances for other teams around them. Sporting Calce bottom with 10 points. Loughborough Lightning just ahead of them with 12. Derby and Halifax both on 15. And you would imagine it's any 2 from those 4. Sporting Calce, you would think, have probably left themselves too much to do with 3 games to go. They'll need 6 points from the available 9. But stranger things have happened, whereas Loughborough Lightning really only need 4 from the potential 9. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Now, obviously, you won't need the best of glasses to be able to see that, of course, young Nick is from the Wolves Win podcast. So we should probably fly straight over to him and just find out exactly how he's feeling about currently being second to Burnley. How's it feeling? That's a bit of a harsh question to ask you, Nick. But what's going on? Probably is the better way of wording it.
Let's just put it this way: I still haven't calmed down and fully digested and taken on board the shocking refereeing performance that was the Burnley versus Wolves game. If anyone has seen the Wolves goal that was disallowed, and can explain to me how a Burnley player going through the back of the wall striker is a free kick for Burnley under the laws of association football, I'll be most grateful, because that was why our goal was ruled out as far as we can understand. And yeah, it was a absolutely appalling decision, and that just it spoiled what was actually a really good tight contest between two really good teams. And if I'm completely cards on the table, Burnley deserved to be in the lead in the first half. We were very unlucky not to be, very lucky not to be further behind. We went in their second half and really pushed them, and really should have been level pegging, and it would have made it even more tight and more entertaining division than it already is. I'm not, the ref. I'm not going to name and shame. That's not worth it. Doesn't benefit anybody. What I would say is, we're seeing the investment in women's football growing, but the officiating is not keeping pace with that investment. We've got referees who will not be doing men's league football, wouldn't be doing national league football, doing in the men's game, doing the third tier of women's football between teams that are pushing for promotion in what was the biggest game of the weekend, bar the League Cup final that weekend in the Subway Cup. It was the second biggest game after the Subway Cup, that game, yes, on that weekend, and we had a referee who was not of sufficient standard for that game, and that's. The league should be looking at how they do it, and that's what's so frustrating, because it spoils the contest realistically now. Because Burnley will not and should not drop any more points, and that means that Wolves will, as I think it was Emily said, that Burnley will win it by a point, because that's what it will be, because that will be the difference between us. It's just so frustrating. And Claire, just seeing your message, it was about, the official attendance is just over 1,000. I don't think it was that high. I think if anyone goes on to full time and checks the Burnley stats, it's amazing how many games are 900 when they're at Turf Moor and 150 when it's at the Lancashire County FA ground. I've never known a football game, or multiple football games, finish with have the exact same attendance, to the T. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But that's my sort of measured rant, I think, off my chest. As for the rest of it, I'm sorry, John. Calcer are down, mate. I think it's a goner. And just looking at Luff, I mean, the key fixture there is going to be last game of the season, because they've got to play Luff. They've got to play Luff for a last game of the season. And I think that will do for Loughborough as well. I think Derby will stay up, but I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked at Derby, because they've got a bloody good manager in Sam Griffiths, and they shouldn't be sitting 10th. That's a lack of investment by that football club. But I'll be quiet now and let John have his piece, and see which club he can name drop again this section.
Well, I was exactly going to ask John's pop down to the bottom half of the table, because as you say, there is a lot going on there. Halifax, as we know, were given the reprieve last season. They've got two big games, though. They've got to play Burnley and Wolves. That's their last game, is Wolves, obviously, and they've got Loughborough, as you mentioned, in the middle. So, there's a big game, really, in that respect. That's not the sort of endings you would really want to be having. When you look at Derby's fixtures for the run in there, they've got Hull, West Brom and Liverpool fed. So, potentially a couple of teams there that sort of around about them, but still, even there, not perfect for them. When you look at Loughborough, we've already mentioned the fact they've got Halifax, but they've also got Stoke, and then, as you mentioned as well there, Nick, they've got Sporting Calcer in the very last game of the season, whereas Calcer have still got to play Rugby Borough, Leek Town, in the County Cup, probably doesn't matter that one, and of course Middlesbrough as well. So there's some big games there to be played still, John. I think people are saying that Derby could be safe, but are you a little bit worried there about Halifax? Because a little loss to Loughborough Lightning and a Loughborough win against Sporting Calcer could be enough to drop Halifax back down into the bottom two again?
I think Halifax probably just needs the 1 point. I think if you get 16 points, if you're Halifax with that superior goal difference, then 16 points should definitely be enough. Derby still going to play Hall, WBA, and Feds, so that's still quite tricky. Loughborough, I definitely wouldn't say a down at the moment, because with Halifax and Kelsey, you'd like to think that it's in their own hands. And a time against Stoke. Stoke don't really have much to go for. Still in the County Cup. Depends on when them County Cup semi-finals and finals are going to take place as well. Stoke may not even prioritise that Loughborough game. So for me, I think I can understand Nick's opinion on Kelsey. I can see why. But I think anyone above there could still go down. Kelsey has got the worst draw, absolutely. You know, Rugby, Middlesbrough, and Loughborough. I think it'll probably be all done for Kelsey by the final game of the season, unfortunately. But anyone above there, it's anyone's guess. And I think Emily in the comments said she had a bit of a soft spot for Derby. I think my question to anyone listening is, did Derby do enough come January time, when a lot of signings happen? You see a lot of movement in that 4 weeks over Christmas. You know, did they do enough? I know they bought Ebony Locking, a good, solid defender. But, you know, is that enough when you're on the brink of relegation? You know, should you have done more? A big club like that, you know, you'd like to think that if they need to invest halfway through the season, then they can do. I know West Bromwich Albion did it a couple of years ago when they was towards the bottom. I think on the year that Bolmere got relegated. You know, should Derby have gone in a little bit harder so they're not in the talking? You know, not in this relegation battle now. But very exciting. I'll hopefully get to a couple of these games before the end of the season, and also look out for hopefully a Kelsey Stoke final in the County Cup.
Well, I mean, that would absolutely be a very interesting final for sure. And yeah, very difficult to say who would come out of that on top. You would think Stoke would have the advantage, but having said that, it's a cup final. At the end of the day, you just never know. It only takes a goal. So there we are. So yeah, that is the Northern Premier as it stands. And I think, as we said, looking at it as it is, it's a big league with a lot going on. It does look as though the positions probably are as they're going to be. When I was typing this back up again earlier on, I didn't think, or at least I don't think, any of the positions have really changed. So it does seem to have stayed pretty static over the course of the last 3 or 4 games. So yeah, some big stuff happening there. And that is the North. But we're going to pop down to the South and have a little look at what's going on down here, because that is equally as tight, and possibly with a couple more teams with a little bit in it than you might imagine. Watford currently sat right at the very top, again with 19 games played, 1 point clear of Plymouth Argyle, who have played 1 game more. They are on 46. You've got AFC Bournemouth just below them on 40. They've got a game in hand over Watford, so they would be 4 points behind if they win that game in hand, but still sort of knocking on the door. They're hanging on to the coattails of this particular title challenge, but it does look as though it will be between Watford and Plymouth. But of course, if Watford win their game in hand over Plymouth, it will be 4 points, and you would think that would probably be the end of that. We've spoken about Billericay before, and they are down. It's just from bad to worse, really, for them. Still no points, still nothing, no wins, no draws. Goals are just not there at all, and 129 is their goal difference of the negative variety. It's been a torrid season for Billericay, and I'm sure they can't wait for it to be over. But above them, there is still 1 spot left to be filled in the drop to either Division 1 Southeast or Southwest, and we've got Gwalior United just above the line, along with Hashtag and AFC Wimbledon just under the line on 18 points. They're all got the same number of games played, which in itself is quite interesting. And of course, the news as well coming through today that Hashtag United on the men's side have obviously asked for the Isthmian League to just allow them to be relegated no matter where they finish. Very interesting little statement that was put out by Spencer, the chairman, saying that it's not a relegation, it's like a revival almost, a regeneration or something. And as a result, saying that the whole reason why they're doing that on the men's side is to do with money and the principles of football and all sorts of things. But very, very interesting to see that that's come on the end of what has been probably one of the worst seasons for #United, clearly on the men's side and here on the women's side as well. Although them and their reserves are in the County Cup final for Essex. So there we go. That's sort of where we are on that one. I will throw over to anyone who's got something to add on that one. Anybody got anything they'd like to throw on before we talk about any more there?
Yeah, sorry, no, go on, Nick.
No, you go first, mate. You go first.
Just a quick one, really, from me. I had eyes on the Cheltenham game this weekend as they played AFC Wimbledon, and as you mentioned, and you can see by the look of the table there how tight it is. Wimbledon was actually 2-0 up in that game, and Cheltenham ended up equalising, making it 2-2. But with look how tight that is. Cheltenham are the highest placed team, however, to play that extra game more. And I believe if you have a look at the fixtures, from what I'm told, Cheltenham are far from safe because all the bottom teams have got to play kind of each other. So there's a lot more points to be had in this bottom half of that league. So massive draw that is for Cheltenham, because obviously that would have put Wimbledon right up there and put more pressure on Cheltenham. But as you mentioned, massively under pressure. It's going to be very, very tight. I'd like Cheltenham to stay up, of course. That's a team that I'll keep an eye on at least now. I'm not as close to it as I was in previous seasons, but it's definitely a team that I'd like to see stay up.
I think Cheltenham will be safe. I was just looking at their fixtures. They've got #United on the 5th of April, and then they've got Billericay Town last game of the season. They're the two remaining games. That should be them more or less safe unless something happens. But I think you're right, John. I think it is really tight. And as you say, they're all three, #Gwalia and Wimbledon, are all playing some combination of each other somewhere along the line. It's going to be a really tight, tough last few weeks in that league. As we play through the last couple of games, and I think I saw, Claire mentioned there that # have sort of stabilised after the mass exodus that they had. I do wonder whether as you said, Barry, there the statement around # will. As a club will impact decisions that are made around the women's team as well, and whether actually it'll be beneficial from a club's financial perspective if they had #women also dropped a division at the same time to sort of enable their sort of rebuild, etc., across the board, and just sort of that. So it might be that in their interest to not necessarily lose the games, but to have others win games and progress up at the top of the table. I think it's going to be a really interesting battle for those sort of the top two, top three spaces there. I think the top three is set as Bournemouth, Plymouth, and Watford, but it's that. I think Watford will win the league. It's then whether either having not lost the league game for 2 seasons or something like that. Bournemouth have now lost 2 in fairly quick succession and drawn games as well. You'd expect them to win. It does feel like the wheels coming off the bus in that particular club at the minute, and that last run in, it might be just a little bit too much for them, and therefore see Plymouth finish second. And I think if that does happen, Marie Hourihan is got to be a shoo-in for Manager of the Year as well, because she's taken Plymouth, who were finished 10th last season, just above relegation, and take him into finish second. I know obviously there's been a significant amount of investment there, but she's still got to turn it around, and she's done a phenomenal job there. And I think it also demonstrates what Stoke lost last season, because obviously she left them and they've not kicked on from where they were last season under her. So I think it's going to be a really interesting battle there. And obviously we see round whatever we're on now, 3, 4 between Plymouth and Bournemouth in the cup final this weekend as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's a big old sort of season that we're looking at there. And I mean, you would think that Watford have got enough about them there to be able to go on and win the division. As we say, their final games are Exeter at home and Bournemouth in the last game of the season at home, and then Gwalior away. Bournemouth will obviously be a very tough one, but you would think that they are very capable of winning the other two games, whereas Plymouth, of course, with their 2 games left to go, have still got to face Oxford and Real Bedford, and they are, of course, again, games that they could potentially win. So it's by no means over at all. There is a lot still to happen in that division, and it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. And like you said there, Nick, as well, I'm really intrigued to see what will happen with hashtag. Obviously they won't want the side to get relegated, certainly not publicly, but it does seem very interesting that it has coincided with both teams not doing particularly great. And as we say, a little bit of an exodus happening as well from hashtag, certainly one of their players, Leonie Telford, who played mostly, to be fair, for the reserves, but did have a few outings with hashtag's first team, have come down to Stevenage and joined us this season. So yeah, it's very interesting to see what is happening over there at hashtag, and a side that only 10 years old, which is quite something itself. So I want to ask you both as well, whilst you're on here and we're looking at this, obviously we know that the winners of Manchester United got a penalty. I didn't even see that happen. I saw something occur, but you will have to excuse me for a moment whilst I just fan yell. May Letitia stepping up for this, so let's just see what happens there.
Jones's finest. Jones's finest.
Captain Fantastic. Good news. So 1-1. All of a sudden, the night doesn't feel quite so long. Go on, May Letitia. Not sure what it was a penalty for, but obviously blatant penalty all day long. Stone wall. That's what we're saying.
Not a dodgy VAR decision. Not a dodgy VAR decision, this one.
I would imagine VAR was used, I'm sure. The playoffs. Obviously, there will be some playoffs, I believe, that are occurring from this one. Talk to us a little bit. What do we think is going to happen there? Because obviously we've got Plymouth, potentially Wolves as well. Just trying to remind myself what's happening. So from WSL2 to the WSL, there's going to be 2 teams going up and then a relegation battle between third place and the side that finished bottom. Whoever wins that game goes through. WSL2, something goes a little bit wrong for them, but talk to me about what's going to happen there. 2 teams will come up to replace the 2 teams that have gone up there. Is it a similar thing?
So we have the top team in Tier 3 Northern, top team in Tier 3 Southern will automatically get promoted. So that'll be, as things stand, Watford and Burnley. Fingers crossed Burnley slip up, go Rob Mitchell and Halifax. They will automatically go up, and then you'll have a playoff game between the 2 second place teams. So that will be, as things stand, Plymouth and fingers crossed Burnley. That will be so they'll play off, and it's definitely, and that will be the decider for who takes the 3rd promotion spot, just to sort of pad the WSL2 back up to 12 teams. That's the plan. From everything I've heard on the grapevine, the Watford, Plymouth, Bournemouth, Wolves, and Burnley have all submitted their applications, and I believe Rugby did, but obviously Rugby are now well and truly out of the race for the playoff places. But so those 5 teams all submitted their paperwork for promotion. Obviously, it's it was public knowledge that last season Wolves didn't submit their paperwork. We made it very clear this season that we have done. I think the gossip that I'm hearing on the grapevine is that all 3 playoffs, because there'll be a Tier 4, 2 Tier 4 playoffs as well, which we could come on to later. But all 3 playoffs will be held on the first May bank holiday weekend in a fairly central location. So obviously you can start working through which teams haven't got games, which men's teams haven't got games on that weekend, and start removing stadiums. And if you end up in somewhere sort of Staffordshire sort of neck of the woods, you won't be far wrong. I don't mean Stafford Rangers. Yeah, so for the weekend, that May Bank Holiday weekend, and I believe it is Tier 4 North Midlands, Tier 3, then Tier 3 South East South West, then Tier 3. Tier 3 is Monday. That's what I do know. Bank Holiday Monday.
There you go.
Nothing's obviously officially been published, but that's what the grapevine is saying, and the grapevine is usually fairly strong. So yeah.
Well, as you say, Marvin Gaye loved it through the grapevine, didn't he? So that's what it was all about. But we're going to ask you, John, because it doesn't feel right and fair to ask Nick this question, because we're all looking and thinking that as much as Nick says, fingers crossed, it's looking like it will be Wolves and Plymouth that do that. Who do you see being that third team that goes up?
I think it's just flick of a coin in regards to North versus South. I think obviously both four teams immensely strong, aren't they? We can see that. Look, I think Burnley have gone through the season very strong, and I can't see them slipping up, although it can happen. But Wolves should still go into the game against Plymouth, Watford, or Bournemouth. Either one of those, and feel like they can win. They went into Burnley feeling like they could win, and it was only. Well, like Nick said, it was only that fluke kind of incident that possibly was a difference there in the end. So yeah, look, I can't see Burnley slipping, so it's going to probably be Wolves against maybe Plymouth, which is an amazing occasion, isn't it?
It really is, absolutely, and I think that will be quite something. We've got Emily saying that she thinks Wolves will be the third team to go through. What's Bournemouth running like? Well, I will always answer your questions for you if I can.
I've got it here, Darren, if you want.
Me too.
I'll let you.
But go ahead, Nick, if you want to throw it out there.
I had it up in front of me, which is they've got two home games first. So they're at home to Wimbledon, and then Real Bedford, and then they're away to Lewis and Watford on the last day of the season. So I think, Claire, that last game of the season will obviously have a huge impact. You've got the game against Real Bedford and Lewis will be interesting. And to note, the game against Real Bedford is being played in the Vitality Stadium as well. So, that'll be interesting. There'll be a few more fans there for that one.
Absolutely. So there we go. That's what Bournemouth's run in is like. And like I said, I think their race is pretty much run. It's going to be between Watford and Plymouth Argyle. But again, never say never. If the math still says it's possible, then it's possible, but it's unlikely. I think is where we will go with that one. There we go. Right, that is Tier 3 done and dusted for another couple of weeks. So we can move down to Tier 4 now, and we'll move on to I love the way I do that. Division 1 North, which is something very exciting indeed, because there is a lot happening, as there always is, in this division. A few changes as well, some of which are perhaps a little bit unexpected. Now, there is no truth to the rumours that Gareth couldn't make it this evening because his team have dropped to 6. So that's not the case. I don't want anybody to be throwing that and bandying it around.
He's trying to dry out the pitch. He's trying to dry out the pitch. He's got his hair dry. He's got his hair dryer out to dry out the pitch. That's what it is.
I can confirm he's actually at the Manchester United game as it stands. He is one of the, goodness knows how many, 12,000 or so that are currently watching United 1 Bayern 1, just in case you didn't hear that a moment ago. So what's going on in this division, though? That's what we're here to talk about. And Huddersfield are still top of the table, a point clear of Leeds United and with a game in hand. So they are in that marvellous position of having both the game in hand and the points on the board, which is a golden place to be. However, Cheadle Stingers are by no stretch of the imagination gone from it. They have a game in hand over Huddersfield Town. They win that. They would only be 2 points behind, so it is by no means plain sailing. Durham Sestria are obviously not completely out of it either. They've still got 4 games to go, but that 7 points is not looking promising. So you would say that really you're looking at any team from the top 3 positions there. to get that. And of course, that second place will probably also be taken up by one of those three teams. When you drop down to the bottom, Blackburn Rovers. I've got a great question for you guys in a minute on that one. So we've got Blackburn Rovers, bottom of the table, 4 points, and to all intents and purposes, they are gone. But we've got York City and Donny Rovers Bells on 11 points, just around the relegations over Chester Street Town on 12. It will be one of those three teams you would think that would be joining Blackburn Rovers, but who will it be? Guys, I'm going to kick my question off as you jump into this one with a very simple question about Blackburn Rovers, because they obviously were dropped, parachuted down from WSL2, and they sort of took a bit of a voluntary relegation themselves. Now, when Reading did it, they went to Tier 5. Blackburn, for some reason, were dropped in at Tier 4. In hindsight, which is always 2020, was that a bit of a stupid decision? Should Blackburn have just gone straight into Tier 5? Because ultimately, they've not been very successful at this level. So what do we think? And our thoughts on the division?
I think you're right. They should have gone into Tier 5. I think a lot of the players they've got are of Tier 5 quality. Certainly, they've when I looked at who they've recruited a lot from Accrington and things like that. Accrington Stanley, who are they? But again, I think it says a lot about it. It was an odd one to see them going into Tier 4. I'd say I didn't think it was quite right, but there we go. As for the division as a whole, I think it's a cracking division. I think there's lots of competition, and this division again is going to go right down to the wire. I think not maybe necessarily who will finish 12th, but I think who will win the league, who will finish second, and who will finish 11th will be decided on the last day of the season. I think that will be. I think that'll be really interesting, because I think there's York and Donny have got to play each other. They've got to play Blackburn as well. Chester Lee Street, I think, have got to play a couple of the other teams around them as well. If I just double check, but I think they're all in that sort of mix there. And I think then you're looking at the top end. Leeds are suddenly finally doing some business, I think, in this division, which is good to see, because they shouldn't be. Realistically, a club of Leeds' stature shouldn't be in Tier 4. So we'll make it that if they do get up, then that'll make Tier 3 Northern a really good, more entertaining division with more investment and more growth. But again, Huddersfield were formerly of Tier 3 Northern, so therefore it's good to see them as well stepping up and really pushing again. And obviously you've got the best team in South Manchester is who obviously plate final bound as well this weekend in Cheadletown Stingers as well. They'll cause some mischief. And just to sort of add to answer Claire's question there, I'd say the North is probably the stronger of the leagues in total, because I think more teams could take points off each other. That's my view. There we go.
I think regarding the Blackburn situation, you don't know if it's just a case of just misunderstanding maybe the league. So did they just underestimate how good National League actually is and how good Tier 4 North is? Did they think, we could go into that league and still at least keep afloat? And maybe they were just a little bit naive to it. How many people in that women's section, previously stayed with Blackburn actually knew the strength of Tier 4. So it could have been to do with that. They may not have actually realised that it was going to end up quite as bad as it was. Maybe if they didn't know that they were going to lose almost every game, then you'd have thought maybe then they'd have chose Tier 5. But I think a few teams are a little bit naive sometimes when you see how quickly the leagues move on. I think that the leagues progress every couple of years. So what's now Tier 4 next year will be like a Tier 5 standard. So for me, maybe it could have just been to do with that. Nick's pointed out a few things that I was looking at. Huddersfield obviously got relegated a couple of seasons ago. Great to see that they haven't dropped off. They could have quite easily gone the opposite way and lose control and keep slipping. They haven't, which is great to see. Leeds, I remember those when when Stourbridge was fighting against them as well. And it's good to see Leeds up there. It really is a big name team. It's going to draw in money and crowds. So hopefully, they're the team for me that would get promoted. But we haven't really mentioned Williamshaw with those games in hand. Gareth always says that he would prefer points as opposed to games in hand. What would he prefer at the moment? But yeah, I think there's still a lot to play for yet in this league, and I'm looking forward to hearing Gareth talk all about it.
Just quickly, John, on your points about Huddersfield and not falling away, I think it's worth noting that Fylde have won in Tier 5, and obviously we're talking Women's National League at the minute, but Fylde, who were relegated at a similar sort of time to Huddersfield and did drop away, have just won promotion back to Tier 4, so we'll be in this division next season. So I think that's... but they've obviously invested quite heavily, from what I understand, in a team, certainly heavily for a team in Tier 5. So we'll see them back in the division, and that will cause eruptions. I think, just look at the bottom end. I think there's a story there to be told again. Is if Donny Rovers Bells get relegated. I think they obviously survived last season by reprieve, but I think there is a story there about Donny Rovers and what's happened to that club, and I think. I'm surprised that more journalists haven't sort of gone asking the question, because obviously Donny Rovers were, not that long ago, a top team in women's football in this country, and are now sitting 10th out in the fourth tier of women's football. That's a huge slip off when you consider where they were and who played for them and who came through them, and not that long ago as well.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Not ideal at all. But yeah, spoiler alerts there from Nick from next week's show as to who's already been promoted. Oh, unbelievable. That's taking the headlines immediately.
I'm sorry.
I'll let you up. It's fine. It's only filed. So no, it's all good. Don't mean that if there's any file teams watching, behave yourselves. So yes, a very good division. We've said this time and time again when we've looked at the Division 1 North. It is a very exciting league, but when we move to the Midlands, some might say potentially a little bit less exciting going on here. We will go to John first on this one, but Peterborough United currently top of the shop. They have knocked Boldmere St Michael's off of the top position since the last time we looked at the division, and again, a bit like Huddersfield, they are sat there in that position where they have got both the points on the board and the games in hand. So very, very helpful for them. They could be 8 points clear of Boldmere St Michael's and 7 points clear of Leafield, who obviously have got the game in hand as well, with just 3 games to go. So it really does look as if Peterborough United are going to sew this division up sooner rather than later. Lincoln United, one of the sides who now have had their relegation confirmed, which I think is probably no surprise to anybody who has followed this level of football over the course of the last season. Lincoln as a whole, certainly as a town, is certainly undergoing a bit of a shift and a change in terms of how women's football is going to be played there. So we're very interested to see how that develops over the course of the next few months. Now, the big bits, of course, that are going on is the mighty Stourbridge, again, flirting with danger. They are just below the dotted line with 14 points. Sutton Coldfield Town, same number of games played, 1 point clear of them. Kidderminster Harriers, not fully clear of danger either, with Notts County just above them. You would think it's probably going to be Sutton or Stourbridge, but you can never quite tell, John. I know that you are very close to the action in terms of this division. What can you tell us?
Well, every game on the weekend actually meant something for the top and the bottom. So I'll just read through the scores and the matches first and just go into a little bit of detail. So the big game of the weekend for this one regarding the top of the league was Boldmere versus Peterborough. So Peterborough ended up winning 3-2. There was 3 red cards in the game, 5 goals. Absolutely crazy game it really was. So I'll just quickly give a bit of detail on that one. So Peterborough took the lead after about 30 minutes or so. It was a penalty. Boldmere goalkeeper Ellie Maylock got sent off. Boldmere equalised with a free kick just before half time, and then after 58 minutes, Boldmere took the lead with Keely Davis. So let that sink in just for the moment there. You're a player down and you still score 2 against the league leaders. So you're 2-1 up. And then after about 75 minutes or so, there was an equaliser, so it went 2-2. 85 minutes, Tara Kirk was subbed on. 3 minutes later, she scores the winner. Just as you think the excitement's over, there's then another 2 red cards about 98 minutes in. So what a game that is. We can all know what's going on the sidelines. You can all imagine the emotions on the sidelines there from the managers, coaches, players. And I think that has just sealed the deal for Peterborough. And Barnmere will just be looking at finishing second in that league now. Barnsley 2, Sutton 1. So not a great period of time for Southern Coalfield. Got a lot of time for the manager, Harry Rowe. What I like about Harry, and I might have said this before, is win, lose or draw, he'll give an interview, either on YouTube or a radio or on their own social media accounts. And for a young chap who's new to the role, having to answer these questions week in, week out about what went wrong, I think fair play to him, because I think he's doing a decent job there, even though the league is starting to slip away a little bit. I think he's done a great job for what he took over there. Lincoln 0, Kiddie 4. So unfortunately, that is the end for Lincoln. Kiddie, on the other hand, they'll be looking at that now thinking 1 more point and it's pretty much guaranteed. Beth Grady with 2 goals, and she also scored a fantastic overhead kick last month and won the goal of the month for Kiddie Harries as well. Great to see a fullback actually getting on the score sheet so often. Lammy, the captain, also scored, and a recent signing, Shauna McCann, scored another goal there. Northampton 2, Notts County 1. Now, this is crazy, this is because I'm sure Northampton have won something along the lines of 4 out of 6 this calendar year. So they was in the relegation zone come Christmas time. Stourbridge was out of it. And now all of a sudden Northampton have won 4 out of 6. A lot of things going on at Northampton. The reason why they are winning games, and well done to them. They've saw that they was in trouble and they've invested and they've come together at the right time. Sheffield United 0, Leafield 1, a very, very tight game. I spoke to Tash on Monday. An interview went out on Switch Sport Radio. You can listen to it on our socials. A very, very tight game, but also all of a sudden now, by them winning that game and Barnmere losing, Leafield are in the driving seat, and I'll explain the reason why a little bit later. And then the game that I actually attended on Sunday, Worcester 5, Stourbridge 0. Maya Clark, fantastic goal scorer for Worcester. She scored a hat-trick, 2 headers and a great curling shot from outside the box. Jess Fastnich and Jasmine Springer with the 5th goal. But yeah, some great games there, and every game actually meant something in regard to the league. There was no mid-table battles. There was actually real meaningful games there. Just regarding the upcoming fixtures, because it is really important. Starting at the top, I'll just tell you Barnmere and Leafields. Barnmere have got Kiddie away, Stour away. So you'd like to think from Barnmere's point of view, you'd like to think from Barnmere's point of view, they'll go into that game against Leafield on the final game of the season with an additional 6 points. Leafield, with that game in hand, have got Notts County away, Kiddie at home, Lincoln United at home, and then Barnmere away. So all of those teams are all in the bottom half of the league. So you probably presume at this point that Barnmere and Leafield will go in to the final game of the season, where Barnmere will need to win their final game, and Leafield are happy to draw it. So top of the table, yes, you are right, Barry. Looking at the numbers, and if you just look at the facts of the figures, yes, it may not be looking at as exciting. However, when you know a few backstories and a few of the friendly rivalries there, it's very, very exciting. Towards the bottom, I'll just give you some three lots of fixtures. Kiddie have got a big say in regards to who's going to be at the top, well, the second at least. But they've got Barnmere and Leafield, followed by Peterborough. And that Peterborough game could be the one where Peterborough seal the title. And then last game of the season, Kiddie against Sutton. So potentially, if Stourbridge can gain an extra 3 or 4 points going into that final game, the old manager of Stourbridge could save Stourbridge by relegating Sutton on the final game of the season. It's wishful thinking, but it's possible, just about. Sutton have got Lincoln at home, Sheffield away, and then Kiddie at home. And then Stourbridge have got 4 games left, 3 of them at home, starting this weekend against Northampton, Sheffield at home, Barnmere at home, and Posh away. So really, Stourbridge need to win this weekend and win at least a point against Sheffield. But I think it's 2 points. I think it's 2 wins that's needed, and then I'm hoping that other teams can do you a favour as well.
Yeah, that sounds about right, to be fair, John. Half time in Europe, so we can shelve that for the next 15 minutes, which is very good indeed. But yes, what a league this could turn out to be. Still, like we say, still a lot going on there. And again, Northampton Town were a side that were doing incredibly well last season. Leafield have obviously repeated some of the success they had from last year as well. So lots and lots and lots going on there. I just asked you both the question, therefore, a very similar one to one that I just asked you about the North and South. Again, same thing happens here. The side that finishes second in Division 1 North will play the side that finishes second in Division 1 Midlands, as we know, is a playoff to make it into the Northern Premier. At the moment, the 5 teams really that look like they could probably finish in the top, well, not in the top 2, in second. Huddersfield, because at 1 point, Leeds, Cheadle, Boldmere, and Leafield. So, out of those 5 teams, who do we see being the most likely to get themselves into the Northern Prem?
Leeds.
No messing about.
Huddersfield win the league. Leeds will finish second and beat Leafield in the playoff, which will be highly entertaining for many reasons. But there you go. Not so much the Leeds beating Leafield, but the fact that Leafield will be finishing second will be highly entertaining. Go Team Tash. Just quickly, John, I think I was looking through the fixtures, etc. I think realistically, if Sutton win on this weekend against Lincoln, that's Stour down. Maybe not mathematically, but just because I don't see Stour getting enough points to overtake Sutton at that point. I think that will be the end of Stourbridge's time in the FA Women's National League, which is a crying shame because I've always had a soft spot for them. They've done really well. I think it's. You look at likes of Stourbridge, you look at Blackburn, you look at how Derby are being managed as well at the minute by the ownership. Is if you stand still in women's football, you slide backwards fairly rapidly, and you've got to keep pace. And okay, maybe Stourbridge, and I think with the benefit of hindsight, Stourbridge fans will probably suggest they probably did get promoted into Tier 3 far too quickly. They should have stabilised in Tier 4 before they got that promotion into Tier 3. But I think that's a benefit of hindsight at this point. I think there needs to be a hard look at clubs need to have a hard look at how they manage their women's team and going forward, because I don't think how Stourbridge managed it at the time was the right decision. And I think it'll be interesting to see. And I think you're right. I think Andy Fisher with Kiddie will have a big say in lots of what's left to go this season. I don't think we've had a show since Andy announced that he was stepping down at the end of the season, have we? I think that was big news that came out of over the last couple of weeks. And personally, I've interviewed him on the Wolves Women podcast, and I think what he's done for women's football in the West Midlands is huge. And I think, the game is in a better place because of the likes of Andy Fisher. And I think, I think that's important. I think we need to recognise that the contribution Andy's done over the last few seasons in the women's game. So, hat tip to Mr. Fisher there, and all the best for what's coming, for whatever he's got planned for the next few years, or next season at least.
Speak of the devil, there he is. Look at that, amazing. Either that or his number one fan is in the chat. We can't be, because he's just below us down here. John, I know you need to run off, but just before you do, if you could answer my question, that would be lovely. Who do you see being the side that makes it up to the Northern Prem?
Can I just say first and foremost, this isn't the first time that Andy's been in the comments, so it's great to see. Andy isn't the only one, but what you do see is a lot of people in the game actually fans of the game. and Andy's just watching here today just as a fan, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think Bournemouth being at home against Leithfield, I think is probably a factor. I know the Leithfield lot more than I know the Bournemouth lot, so my kind of heart does kind of lead more towards Leithfield. But I think it'll be a very, very 50-50 kind of guess, if I'm honest. Leeds do look very strong in that other league. But then having said that, if you have a look at the record of Bournemouth and Leithfield in the last 8 games or so, I think Leithfield's done absolutely fantastic. I don't think I think I got a stat somewhere that I spoke about yesterday where in the last 8 games, I think they've only conceded 5, 2 of which are penalties, and they haven't conceded a goal in 548 minutes, which is absolutely phenomenal. So if it goes on form, then I'll probably say that Leithfield will win Bournemouth or Leeds, but let's see, a cup final is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? So anything could happen.
For sure. Sorry if you saw me laughing there, but it will never get old when you see the pundits get squirted by the water when it goes spinning around. And exactly what happened to Alex Scott and Ella Manure. So there you go. John, I know you need to drop off, so do feel free to disappear whilst we move down to the south. Thank you very much for joining us again, John. Hopefully we will see you again soon.
Cheers, Sean.
Whilst he disappears off of here, it'll be down to Nick and I to take you through the 2 southern divisions, and we will kick off, as ever, with the Division 1 South East, which is all kicking off as it stands. Cheshire United, with just 3 games left to play, will find themselves now out of the division for sure. They are relegated. They can only get to 14 points, which will not be enough. AFC Sudbury, with 4 games to play, are mathematically not down, but sort of morally are, because they've got 12 points that they can possibly get, and they are not likely, I don't think, to get them, considering they would have to be getting, well, let's be clear, 5 points more than they've actually earned all season. So not looking great for them. Cambridge United, obviously, just above the relegation line, probably feeling a bit happier now that they can start to rebuild, looking towards next season. They had Jade Bell, interestingly enough. She was on a dual signatory. She's gone to Tier 6 Biggleswade, which is quite interesting to try and get some more goals under her belt, I think. So some interesting things happening there when you consider how many she was banging in for Northampton last season, which, of course, I think feeds into the conversation that Claire was having about the differences that there may be between some of these divisions. And then as you move further up, obviously you see that the battle that has been raging since the first ball was kicked, would it be Fulham? Would it be Norwich City? At the moment, it's looking like Fulham. They're still unbeaten, the only side in the division to do so. 17 wins, 2 draws. Their goal difference is looking pretty healthy. So is Norwich's, to be fair. For them, the season's going to end, and when they look at it, it's literally going to be a case of the points they dropped against Fulham. And what will be even more frustrating for them is that they could have potentially been above them with just drawing effectively, but because they didn't, it's all gone a little bit wrong for Norwich, and it looks as though Fulham will be the side that go on to win a division. And why do we say that? Well, lots of different reasons, but the most important one being because they're absolutely on fire as it stands. Being unbeaten does, of course, have its joys and perks and privileges, but when you then look at your last 3 games and you realise you've got MK Dons, Luton Town, and then finish with London Bees, it does leave you in a bit of a situation where you think, yes, London Bees could be the hardest one out of those. Luton have had a sort of a lukewarm season, and of course MK Dons are just about safe now. So you do wonder quite how important those games will be for those teams. Looking at Norwich City, they've got a bit of a tricky run in as well. They've got Chatham, Dulwich and Cambridge United. So Chatham, by no sense of anything, are unlikely to want to just give up. So it does look as though Fulham are going to be the side that get 2 promotions on the trot, which could be quite something. And this is quite a stat. Unbeaten for 44 games in nearly 2 years, and absolutely overjoyed at the progress. And so you should be, Claire. Chatham after revenge at Norwich for a 90-plus minute winner earlier in the season, so that should be a cracking game, and it should be all over before the last game. And I've got to be honest, I think I agree with that. I think the way you are seeing that league now is what it will look like come the end of the season. Anything you would add to that, Nick?
Yeah, just a quick one there. I just looking at Cambridge United. I saw them pre-season play rugby. I was actually really impressed. They pushed rugby hard pre-season. I thought Cambridge were going to do well. Sort of good mid-table team. I think one thing that really intrigues me is if you look at their goal difference there, -7. That's a sixth-place goal difference, and it's obviously something's not quite clicking right for. I want to say Dean. It's not Dean. I'm trying to remember his manager's name now. I happen to know the manager's dad. The manager's dad is a goalkeeper coach who coaches my son. That's why I know his dad's called Dean. So there you go. Little useless piece of information there. But yeah, I think they should be finishing. Cambridge should be higher than what they are. I think there'll be questions asked about that, but Cambridge are picking up and sort of looking. They're moving back into Cambridge itself, so they're leaving. They're leaving St Neots, where they've been for the last few seasons, moving to Cambridge. So actually, we'll be back in the city, which I think will do them good. Help build a stronger fan base, stronger, sort of identity there, and which will be good. I think, the fact that both Fulham and Norwich have got 2 easier games and one tough game, I think will make that running even more interesting. I think, the Fulham, I'd put my money on Fulham now as well, and I think it will come down to the fact that Fulham won that game at the Nest. I think if Norwich had been able to hang on to that one and get a draw out of that, I think it would be a lot closer. And I think I'll note Claire's point there as well in the chat there about MK Dons have improved significantly. I don't think they could have been much worse than they were last season. They obviously sort of dropped from tier 4 last season into this division, from tier 3 last season, quite significantly. I think so they've obviously started that rebuild. I think they will obviously start to push back up the division at that point, which is not going to have, which will be good in a coming couple of seasons as well. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think next season this division is going to be really interesting actually, because I think it'll be interesting to see who comes down. Could well have Billericay and hashtag in here. You will have Billericay. You could well have hashtag in there with them. You would have an improving Cambridge, improving MK, and maybe Norwich still in this division. And the London Bees have rebuilt as well, as have Chatham, and Chatham have obviously got all that money from the FA Cup run. So, Claire, good point. Wimbledon versus MK could well be in here, which will be quite tasty as well. But Chatham will have a lot of money to invest in their women's setup after their FA Cup run this season. So, this division next season is going to be the one to watch, I think.
You're not kidding. There might be a certain Stevenage in there as well.
I forgot to mention Stevenage coming up as well.
Quite entertaining, for sure. Come back next week. But I think it really could be. And it's interesting you mentioned Cambridge United. They brought in a lot of interesting players. We mentioned they brought Jade Bell in. She's not hit the levels that you'd have expected her to, and more importantly, that she probably would have expected to. They brought back Vicky Neal within the defence, which is, she's a great defender. Beatrice Rogers has come over. She's been around the club. She's been at Sudbury and London Seawood before that. So, they're bringing in a lot of players, and it's all just been, I think, a little bit hard for them. And I think really all they're trying to do, as you say, is to improve. They're looking for who they think they can keep on for next season. Absolutely. When we played them pre-season as well, and they were a very, very good side. So, it was a bit shocking to see how they got on, and I think I would agree with this, that this is a better league than the Southwest. But of course, I am not convinced that Stu would entirely agree with that. But I think as a whole, I think it's quite difficult to disagree with. So, yeah, there's a lot there, and I think you're quite right, Nick. This is going to be a hell of a league next season in terms of the amount of teams and the quality of the teams that are in there, and I think it's going to be a much more difficult league to get out of as well. So, very interesting to see how Fulham. Go on.
And stay in as well next
and
season.
Stay in, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the year Stevenage got relegated from here, which was 21-22, they relegated 4 sides, which was just crazy. It's been such a long time since, I don't think that's ever happened before, that they've relegated 4 sides, but 4 teams were relegated, and Stevenage or Enfield were the 2 unlucky ones there that finished in 9th and 10th, and that was the end of that. But, certainly now it's a much more difficult league, and I think with Sudbury and Chesham looking like the 2, well, not looking like they are going to be the 2 teams that go down. You mentioned Billericay coming down. If they come down, they'll want to do a bit of an MK Dons there and have a bit of a revival and turn things around, because MK Dons had an equally awful season. I mean, they hadn't conceded quite as many goals, but they were over 100 negative as well. So, there's a definite parallel to be drawn there between MK Dons and Billericay. And Billericay are a side who we know well. We played them before when they were in the Division 1 South East as well. And in fact, they were the first game that I ever went to watch Stevenage play. Was against Billericay Town, a little 1-0 win from a corner. So, yeah, lots to look forward to in this division. There is, of course, one more division that we need to run the rule over, and that is, of course, the Division 1 Southwest. And it's all change at Platform 3 once again. Swindon and Moneyfields have been trading blows and blow after blow after blow. But as it stands, with 19 games played, Swindon Town are top of the shops on 54 points, with Moneyfields just below on 52. There are no chasing teams that can get to them. This will be the 1-2. It's just a case of who is going to finish in which position. Now, when you get to the bottom, doesn't look good for all of those teams. Worthing are, of course, another one of those sides who mathematically could get there, but that 38 goal difference that they would need to swing does not look promising for them. So for all intents and purposes, that's Worthing out of the division, which then just leaves Portishead Town, who have got to get 7 potentially out of the 9 available and remaining points. And that is, of course, not a very simple thing to go and do. You would hope, you really would, that some of these teams would think they would have the opportunity to do so. But the issue that Portishead Town will be facing is that they have got Bournemouth Sports, their middle game is Swindon Town, and they've also got Abingdon United. And I think that Swindon Town fixture is ultimately the one that will guarantee them to be down if they do manage to get a good result in the first game. So looking at that title run, what are the games for the 2 teams? Well, Swindon will, of course, be facing Bridgewater United this weekend. It's a home game. They'll then play Portishead Town. That's a home game. And at that point, they would have played all but one of the games that's left to play. Moneyfields will be in a very similar situation. They will face Bristol Rovers at home. Then they will go to Marine Academy Plymouth. That's away. So technically, both of those teams should win both of those matches, which will lead you to the very last game of the season, at which point Swindon Town will face Moneyfields. And I think that is, to coin a phrase, a little bit of a money match, isn't it? Because it will literally be whoever wins that could well, not whoever, it should end up being whoever wins that game wins the league. And that would be amazing, wouldn't it, Nick? I mean, isn't that what we all dream of? Getting that final match that decides the title. I mean, that's almost going back to Arsenal and Liverpool back in the 90s.
It's how leagues should go. Leagues should be sort of decided last day of the season, real sort of blood and thunder all the way through, go down to the last game of the season, and they're facing each other. And I think, that's going to be one hell of a last game. I would hope somewhere along the line that is streamed, or someone at least is doing a live tweet from it. Because I think that's going to be one. Yeah, will be one for that neutrals will keep an eye on, because it will have such an impact. I think Stu will kill me of this one, but I think Swindon will see it out. I think that even if it's even if they draw that one, I think Money's have got to win it. I think realistically, and I think they won't get the win out of it. I think Swindon will see out a draw, knowing that's all they need to secure the league title, and that will be it done. And therefore takes Money's into the playoff final or playoff game against Norwich, which will unfortunately be one step too far for Money's, is my opinion on that one. And I think that'll be harsh on it'll be tough on Stu and the Money's team over there. But I think they'll have had they'll have something to celebrate this weekend anyhow. So there you go.
Very true. But jumping into that, it could well be Moneyfield against Norwich then as the playoff game. Claire had mentioned earlier on that she thought the South East might be a stronger division than the South West. What do you reckon? I mean, we've played against Norwich at Stevenage. It was a hell of a game. 4-3 they won with a last-minute goal in the FA Cup first round. A very good side, though, Moneyfields as well. I mean, what do you reckon? This could be a bit of a humdinger of a match as well.
The playoff games, to be fair, all three playoff games will be good games, because I think you look at whoever it is that gets into that playoff game from any of the divisions will have done really well. We all know that all these divisions are tough, and I think therefore if you've got there, you've got there on credit, on merit, and I think and I think it's going to be a real sort of battle there. I do think, as Claire said, I think the Southeast is a tougher division than the Southwest, and I mean, we played Sudbury in the League Cup, and we when it was still regionalised and Sudbury counted as Northern, and we beat them 3-0, if I remember right, off the top of my head. And I think, but again, it wasn't, it wasn't space. And you look there for obviously where Sudbury are, where Wolves are, and we didn't, they battled in that division. And I think all that division are battling all the time. And I think, no disrespect to Swindon and Moneys, I think it's, bar the games against sort of the likes of Bristol Rovers and Bridgewater, I think it's been a fairly easy in inverted commas season. I was just looking at some of the results there. Worthing lost 10-0 and 10-2, if I remember rightly, in their last two games against Swindon and Moneys. And I just don't think you get those results in any of the other divisions, really. But bar maybe your Billericay against your Billericay's, but that's it. But that's it. Realistically, it's these games are not. This league isn't as close, and therefore isn't as competitive. So I think the Southeast is the tougher league. There you go.
I mean, I think you're probably right. I would be fascinated to watch either Swindon against Norwich or Moneyfield against Norwich. I think they would both be incredibly good games, like you say. And again, it's absolutely all set up for a very exciting finish. And this is ultimately why we do this show, because it is stories everywhere. There is so much going on and so much that could happen with lots of excitement in. And so, absolutely. We've hit that point where the ending is so close, and it really is a payoff when you follow it all season and you get to see how it's finally gonna finish. And speaking of finishing, that's exactly what we've done, Nick. We have made it from the start all the way to the finish, which is
unlike
John. Yes, he fell at the first hurdle there, but all good stuff, Nick. My pleasure to have had you on the show again. Thank you very much for joining us. Anything you need to shout out?
Just a couple of things. One, obviously, it's the Cup and Play final this weekend. Between League Cup is obviously Bournemouth versus Plymouth, so that'd be really good. It's insight into that battle for the second place there, and the place obviously is Cheadle versus Cheadle, the best team in South Manchester, versus Moneyfield. So good luck, Moneys, on that one. And obviously, if you are in the West Midlands and are stuck for something to do on Sunday afternoon, then get yourself down to the Molineux for the Black Country Derby. Wolves v the Tesco Carrier Bags at the Molineux in the Golden Palace, 3 p.m. kickoff. Look forward to seeing everyone there. But otherwise, no, sir, thank you for your pleasure and hosting it, and good luck to Stevenage at the weekend. And I hope I don't see you in FA Women's National League next season, because that would mean that Wolves will be in tier 2 and won't be playing you. But I hope you make it into the Women's National League next season.
Well, I hope we make it there as well. And of course, we could well do. We've got one big match coming up this weekend at the Stevenage FC Stadium. And if we win it, or even if we draw, actually, just avoid defeat, it will be enough points on the board for Stevenage to make that return to the WNL. So fingers firmly crossed there. And hopefully that is what we'll be reporting on next week when we look at the tier 5. So if I'm all up here in my party gear, then you know it's happened. We shall see. There we go. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm off now to go and watch the rest of Manchester United against Bayern Munich. It's still 1-1.
I thought I could have you. I thought I could have you there, Bell. Reaction. Damn.
Nice try. But here we go. So we're going to go and have a little watch of that. You guys have been legendary as ever. And we will speak to you next week. Night all.